She was a school teacher, a mother, a fighter, and they found her, curled up in that tiny classroom, eyes red, spirit broken, after months of being used and exploited by the very people who were supposed to protect her. This ain't no movie. This is Mississippi. This is real. You're watching At Unbelievable True Story, where we only tell real stories. Not to scare you, but to prepare you. Toshemie Wilson taught kids in Mississippi. She believed in books, chalk, and prayer. But behind the lesson plans, behind the smile, she was living a nightmare. It started in the early 2000s. Teachers, especially black women in the South, were underpaid, overworked, and easy targets. She thought she could trust the system. She thought her school would protect her. Instead, it was the system itself that took advantage of her. And here's the truth nobody likes to say out loud. 1 in 3 women will be attacked in their lifetime. 80% of abuse cases come from someone the victim already knows. Most don't fight back. Not because they're weak, but because nobody ever trained them how. That's why, in the description and pin comment, we added a women's self-defense course, built by police and martial arts experts. It shows how to break free, escape bigger attackers, and stay calm when fear takes over. No gym, no fluff, just 1 hour of survival training you can do at home. Now stay with me, because we're about to break down who did it, how they got away with it for so long, and the one move Toshemie made that changed everything. Let's get into the full story. Her name was Toshemie Wilson. She was a school teacher in Mississippi, a woman who gave kids her love, her patience, her time, but she was the one being used, exploited by the very system that promised to protect her. Picture it, a hot, sticky Mississippi day, the kind where the sun don't just shine. It sits on your back like a man in jail. Classroom fan buzzing weak in the corner. Kids gone home. Just her and the smell of chalk. That's when the door opened. Not with a bang, not with a scream, just a quiet creak, like Trouble walking in, wearing church shoes. And Trouble sat down across from her, wearing a smile, wearing authority, a man she had to answer to. And he said words no teacher should ever hear. Not about math, not about lesson plans. Words that press down heavy. Words that turn her job, her dream, into a trap. Now, let me tell you about Toshemie. She wasn't just a teacher. She was the first in her family to graduate college. She believed in kids, believed education could break chains. She showed up early, left late, graded papers by the light of a single lamp. Her students? They loved her because she saw them, really saw them, not as test scores, not as statistics, but as little souls, fighting to grow. She'd bring extra food for kids who came hungry, slip notebooks into backpacks, so nobody had to ask. That was her heart. But here's the cruel part. Hearts like hers, they attract wolves. This was Mississippi, early 2000s. Schools underfunded, teachers underpaid, especially black women like Toshemie. Folks in power knew that. They counted on it. They used it. So when the men above her, administrators, principals, even board members, came knocking, she was stuck. Say no, lose the job, lose the insurance, lose the little safety net she had. Say yes, lose herself, her dignity, her peace. That's exploitation. Not always with fists, not always with rope, but with pressure, with power, with silence. And let me stop here and say something real. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 3 women worldwide will experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. 2021. That ain't just numbers. That's women like Toshemie, women who show up every day, trying to do right, and still get crushed by people in power. Now back to that classroom. The man leaned in close, smiling, like this was just normal, like she should thank him for looking out. But inside, her chest was screaming. Her heart was slamming. She wanted to run, wanted to yell, but her body froze. That's the thing nobody tells you. Most people don't fight. They freeze. Not because they're weak, but because fear hijacked your whole system. And in that moment, she couldn't move. This wasn't one night. This was months. Little comments, accidental touches, late-night meetings she couldn't avoid, threats hiding in polite voices, all stacking up until she broke down. Her friends started to notice. The way she stopped laughing. The way her clothes hung loose. From stress weight. The way she stared off. Like she wasn't even in the room. But she didn't tell them the whole truth. Not yet. Because she knew how small towns worked. Word gets out, it's her name on the gossip line. Not his. Not theirs. She kept quiet. Until she couldn't anymore. One night, she went home, sat at her kitchen table, and wrote it all down. Every comment, every touch, every thread. That notebook was her only weapon. Ink on paper, against men with power. And let me pause here, because I know some of y'all listening got daughters, got sisters, got wives. That's why we added a real self-defense course, made by law enforcement and martial artists. It's free. It's in the description and pinned comment. 1 hour that might save your life. Not because women like Toshemie are weak, but because the world keeps putting them in danger. Now stay with me, because this story, it only gets darker. The notebook she wrote, it didn't just stay in her kitchen drawer. It got out, and when it did, the people who thought they were safe in the shadows, they started to scramble. And Toshemie's fight turned from whispers in a classroom to headlines across Mississippi. But how did it all unravel? Who stood with her? Who tried to bury her? And what one move brought the whole thing crashing down? That notebook was heavy, not in weight, in truth. Every page was a scar. Every line, a bruise she couldn't show. Names, dates, what they said, what they did, what they promised if she stayed quiet. And one night, she snapped it shut, pressed her hand on the cover, and whispered to herself, "This ain't staying with me." See, when you live in a small Mississippi town, you learn quick. Truth spreads faster than gossip, if you aim it at the right person. And Toshemie aimed it. She showed that notebook to a friend. Not just any friend, another teacher, somebody who'd seen the same men, walking the halls, smiling like saints, while acting like wolves. Her friend read a few pages, and her hand went to her mouth. Not surprised, not shocked, but sad, because deep down, she already knew. That's when the whispers began, not from Toshemie, but from the people who cared about her. Parents, other staff, even a few brave students, who noticed the way certain men lingered too long. At her door, see, when truth comes out, it don't start with fireworks. It starts with cracks, little cracks, that grow too wide to hide. Then came the day Toshemie was called in. Principal's office, door closed, air cold, but sweat on her forehead. He leaned back in his chair. Didn't smile this time. Didn't play nice. "You made some accusations," he said. "Do you understand what this could do? To your job? To your future?" That's the sound of power, when it knows it's been cornered. But Toshemie didn't back down. She was scared, yes. Her hands shook. Her voice cracked. But she said, "What they did to me was worse than what telling it could ever do." That moment right there, that was the shift. That was courage with trembling hands. Now, once the notebook left that office, it wasn't just gossip anymore. It was evidence. And evidence can't be whispered away. It travels. It lands on desks. It forces action. So the school board had to do something. Not because they wanted to, but because eyes were watching. They launched an internal review. That's fancy talk for. We'll check it out, but we'll do it quiet, so nobody gets embarrassed. But quiet didn't last long, because one of those board members, he had a daughter in Toshemie's class. And when he read what happened, he thought about his own child. And just like that, the story leapt out of the shadows. Local police got called in. Sheriff's deputies, detectives, not the kind of folks used to dealing with school scandals. But when they sat down with Toshemie, when they read her notebook, they knew this was more than whispers. This was exploitation, plain and simple. And here's where it got real messy. These weren't random men. These were respected men, church-going men, men with ties to city council, business owners, coaches, the kind of men people don't like to believe could do wrong. But wrong was written in that notebook, clear as day. Toshemie sat through interviews, hours long, same questions asked different ways. Her voice breaking, but steady enough to repeat it all, again and again and again. That's the part folks don't see. Survivors don't just tell the story once. They tell it to friends, to police, to lawyers, to reporters. Each time, They bleed a little more. Word hit the newspapers. Local teacher raises claims of exploitation. That was the headline. Neat, polite, like it was just a budget problem or a school fight. But behind that clean headline was hell, the kind Toshemie had lived for months. And now, the whole town knew. Some folks rallied behind her. Parents sent meals. Other teachers hugged her in hallways. Even strangers left notes on her doorstep. But not everybody. No, there were plenty who turned away, said she was making it up, said she was seeking attention, said she wanted it. That's the ugly truth. Victims get put on trial long before any suspect does. And still, Toshemie stood, not tall, not loud, but steady. Her notebook was her sword. Her truth was her shield. And for the first time, the wolves felt cornered. Let me give you something real. In the U.S., 80% of abuse cases involve someone the victim already knows. CDC 2022. Think about that. Not a stranger in a dark alley, not a masked man in the bushes, but somebody with keys to the building, somebody you see at the grocery store, somebody you're told to trust. That's what made Toshemie's story so dangerous and so real. But if you think the police showing up meant justice came quick, you'd be wrong. Those men had power, money, friends in high places, and they weren't about to let a school teacher tear down their house of cards. So what do? They fought back, not with fists, not with knives, but with lawyers, with influence, with smear campaigns. Suddenly, Toshemie's life wasn't just lesson plans and kids. It was depositions, court filings, whispers in grocery store aisles, phones that rang at night, with no one on the line. They wanted to scare her quiet, wanted to bury her under shame. But Toshemie, she had already been to the bottom. And when you've been there, fear don't work the same. Her fight was just beginning. And the closer she got to truth, the more dangerous it became. Because someone in that town, decided the notebook wasn't just paper anymore. It was dynamite. And they were going to do whatever it took to blow it out of her hands. The first time she noticed, it was just a car, dark sedan, parked across from her house. Engine running, headlights off. She peeked through the blinds, heart racing, told herself, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just a neighbor. But it wasn't nothing. Because the next night, same car, same spot, same hum of an engine, waiting in the dark. That's how it starts. Not with guns blazing, not with screams in the night, but with presence, with eyes, with shadows that never blink. They wanted her scared, wanted her to think twice before showing up to court, before handing over that notebook. And it worked for a while. She barely slept, barely ate, jumped at every noise, started keeping lights on all night, just to feel less alone. But fear got heavy. And when fear gets heavy, you either sink or you climb. So Toshemie climbed. She called the police, filed reports, gave them plate numbers, wrote it all down, same way she'd written the abuse. Every detail, every shadow, every knock at her door with no one standing there. She turned fear into evidence. Now, the men who thought they had her cornered, they didn't expect that. They thought she'd fold. They thought the weight of silence would crush her flat. Instead, she got louder, not with her voice, but with her paper trail, with her determination, with her refusal to back down. But still, the threats grew. She came home once to find her mailbox ripped open, letters scattered down the street. Another time, her car tires slashed. Nothing stolen, just cut, just ruined. A message. And one morning, chalk words on her classroom board. Shut up. Kids weren't even in the room yet, which meant somebody had keys. Somebody close. She shook, wiped the board clean, before her students walked in, put on a smile, even though her hands trembled so hard. She could barely hold the chalk. That's what survivors do. They protect everyone else, while they themselves are under attack. But here's where it shifted. One student, a quiet boy in the back row, stayed after class. He said, "Miss Wilson, why you always look sad?" And that one little question hit harder than all the threats, because it reminded her she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for them, for the kids who trusted her, who needed her to stand tall, and that gave her fuel. The police finally stepped up. They offered patrols past her house, checked the school doors at night, took fingerprints off her car. But justice is slow, and power is slippery. The men she accused, they hired lawyers, made statements about false claims, held press conferences with polished smiles and perfect ties. They played the victim while she was barely holding on. The town split in two. Some shouted her name in support. Others whispered behind her back. Why'd she wait so long? Why now? Why him? See, people don't like their heroes dirty. They'd rather bury truth than face the idea that the coach, the principal, the deacon could be predators. But Toshemie refused to let them bury it. Then came the trial hearings. Long benches, fluorescent lights, her name read out loud, her words dissected in front of strangers. Defense lawyers try to break her. Why didn't you report sooner? Are you sure you remember right? Did you ever lead him on? Questions that cut deeper than knives. Questions meant to twist shame back on her. But she sat there, shoulders stiff, voice trembling, and answered anyway, because silence was no longer an option. And you know what? Some cracks started showing in their side too. Other women came forward. Other staff members whispered. Me too. Parents shared uneasy stories. The wolves weren't just circling Toshemie. They had circled others for years. And once the first domino fell, more toppled. But justice didn't come clean. It never does. Charges got watered down. Some men retired early. Some moved out of town. Others settled out quietly, slipping through loopholes with money and influence. Toshemie didn't get the slam of a gavel she prayed for, didn't get the cathartic ending, but she did get this. The truth was out. Their names were stained, their reputations cracked, and no matter how they dressed it up, the town could never look at them the same. Let me stop here and give you something real. According to the National Crime Victimization Survey, most victims of abuse never report it to police. NCVS 2021. They stay silent out of fear. Fear of losing jobs. Fear of shame. Fear of exactly what Toshemie went through. But when one person speaks, others often follow. And here's the part that sticks with me most. After all the trials, after all the whispers, after all the headlines, Toshemie went back to that same classroom. Kids walked in, sat down at their desks, and she taught. She taught like her life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. Teaching was her defiance, her survival, her way of saying, you didn't break me. You won't break them either. But don't get it twisted. The scars didn't fade. The nightmares stayed. The fear stayed. And every time she saw a dark sedan parked on the street, her chest still clenched. Survival don't mean the pain disappears. It means you carry it and still stand up anyway. Now stay with me, because we're not done. You think this story is about one teacher? Nah, it's about a whole system, about how many others got caught in the same trap, how deep the cover-ups went, and how Toshemie's one notebook set off a chain reaction that burned through Mississippi schools. You ever notice how death don't wait for nothing? It don't care if you're young, if you're working 2 jobs, if you're just trying to love your kids. It come when it come. And that night, death was standing right outside Toshemie's door. Now let me walk you through it. Police later said she had just got home. It was late, a little after midnight. Street lights buzzing, air heavy with that kind of city silence where you can hear somebody cough 3 houses down. Toshemie had been working a shift and then stopping off to see a friend. She was tired, but she was happy. She was talking on the phone. Her cousin said she was laughing, just laughing, standing on her own porch. And ain't it crazy how sometimes your last sound on this earth is a laugh? Then, boom. It wasn't no warning. No argument on the steps. No fight in the yard. Just bullets. Loud. Sharp. Breaking the night open like thunder. Her cousin said she screamed once, short, like when you burn your hand on a hot pan. Then she fell. Neighbors ducked down. Some people peeked out their windows. Folks always say, if I was there, I would have run out. Nah. Gunshots freeze people. It's fear mixed with math. You think, if I step outside, I might be the next body. When police got there, they found Toshemie on the ground. Her phone still glowing. She was bleeding bad. They tried, man. They tried to save her. But life was already slipping. And here's the thing that breaks me. She was 28. just 28 years old. She had 2 kids. She wasn't out doing dirt. She wasn't running some hustle. She was just living. This story is based on real events reported by police and news sources. The cops started asking right away. Who was she talking to? Who saw what? Did anybody hear a car? A fight? But folks were scared. You could feel it. They didn't want to be next. Her kids, man. They woke up that morning asking, "Where's mama?" Try answering that. Try telling a child their mama is gone because somebody wanted to end a life like it was nothing. And let me drop something heavy right here. According to the CDC, over 48,000 people died from gun-related injuries in the U.S. in 2022 CDC 2023. That's not just numbers. That's people like Toshemie. That's mamas. That's brothers. That's neighbors you wave at every morning. Police started piecing things together. They checked cameras on the street. They talked to neighbors. They pulled her phone records. Step by step, they were trying to rewind the night. And you know what's wild? The shooter didn't just vanish into the dark. Nah, shooters leave trails. Footsteps, fingerprints, fear in the air. You can't wash that away. But at first, it felt like the case was stuck. People whispering. Folks too scared to name names. Cops hitting dead ends. And in the middle of all this, you got a family trying to plan a funeral. Funerals ain't nothing but pain in a box. You stand there, and they put somebody you love in the ground. You bring flowers. You sing. You pray. But in your head, you screaming, why? Why her? I ain't gonna lie. This story ain't easy to tell. It's raw. It's messy. But that's life, right? Life ain't neat. Death sure as hell ain't neat. Now, some people in the neighborhood started talking about street beef. Old grudges. Somebody being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But here's what I think. Toshemie didn't deserve no bullet. Period. I don't care if somebody mad, jealous, angry. There's always another way. You don't take a mother off this earth. And here's the other piece. Violence like this don't just take one life. It ripple. Her kids, her cousins, her mama, her friends. Whole blocks get scarred. People stop sitting outside at night. They stop trusting. They stop living free. That's what one bullet do. It don't just kill one person. It kill trust. It kill peace. That's why we added a real self-defense course, made by law enforcement and martial artists. It's in the description and pinned comment. 1 hour that might save your life. But back to the story. Police kept digging. They got tips. Anonymous calls. Somebody said they saw a car speeding away. Somebody else said they heard a name whispered. And slowly, the picture started coming into focus. But let me pause. I want you to picture that street. Close your eyes. A row of small houses. Street lights buzzing. A body covered with a sheet. Police tape cutting across the yard. Blue and red lights bouncing off windows. That's the scene burned into her kid's memory. That's the last picture of their mama alive. And if you ain't mad yet, if you ain't hurting yet, then maybe you ain't listening. Because Toshemie Wilson was more than just another case file. She was flesh. She was heart. She was laughter on a phone call seconds before the end. And now, police were racing to answer the one question everybody was asking. Who pulled the trigger? The thing about murder is it don't stop at the crime scene. The body might be gone, but the mess spreads everywhere. Police tape gets pulled up. Cops leave. But the family? They stuck with it. Toshemie's mama said it best. She told reporters, "We ain't got no answers. Just pain. That's what murder do. It leave questions that echo in the dark." Police worked the case like a puzzle with missing pieces. They went door to door. They pulled up camera footage from corner stores. They checked out the calls on her phone. They looked for every crumb. And you know how the street is. At first, silence. Folks scared. Too scared to talk. But slowly, whispers started leaking out. Somebody had seen a car. Black sedan. Windows tinted. Creeping slow before the shots. Somebody else said they heard a name. Not loud. Not clear. But enough for cops to write it down. Meanwhile, the kids. Man, the kids. That's the part that hurt most. Her little girl kept asking, "When is mama coming back?" What do you say? How do you explain death to a child who still believes in cartoons? The family leaned on each other. They cooked. They prayed. They cried. But the hole in that house was too big. It swallowed every sound. Now let me say this. Black women like Toshemie are too often forgotten when violence happens. Their names don't trend. Their faces don't stay on the news long. But the pain is just as real. The loss is just as deep. Police hit a break about 2 weeks later. A tip came in. Somebody who couldn't hold it no more. They told cops about a man who had been running his mouth, bragging. You believe that? Took a life, then bragged. The name hit like a spark. Detectives followed it up. They found him, questioned him. He denied, of course. They always deny. But cops had more. They had camera footage of that car near the house. They had shell casings. They had phone records. Piece by piece, the walls closed in. And one night, they made the arrest. Rolled up on him, cuffs tight, read him his rights. That's justice in motion. Slow, heavy, but moving. But here's the thing nobody tells you. Even when the killer gets caught, the pain don't leave. It's like trying to sew up a wound with no needle. The thread just keeps slipping out. At the trial, Toshemie's mama sat there in court, front row, staring at the man who took her daughter. She didn't cry that day. Tears had already dried up. What was left was fire. You could see it in her eyes. You don't know what you took from me. The jury heard all. The evidence, the motive, the witnesses. And when that guilty verdict dropped, the room was quiet. No cheers, no claps, just silence. Because no matter what the sentence, Toshemie wasn't walking back through that door. And here's where I get real with you. Murder cases don't end with a gavel. They end with kids who grow up without hugs. With mamas who set a plate at the table and remember someone who ain't there. With friends who hear a laugh in their head and then remember it's gone. That's the truth. Let me hit you with a fact. According to the National Center for Victims of Crime, children who lose a parent to homicide are at higher risk of PTSD, depression, and lifelong trauma. NCVC 2020. That's what happened to Toshemie's babies. Trauma before they even had a chance to grow. Her funeral. Lord, the church was packed. People standing in the back. Pictures of her smiling, hair done, holding her kids. The preacher said, "Don't let her death be in vain." And the choirs sang, but even that music couldn't fill the hole. After, at the graveside, her little boy let go of a balloon. Red one. Watched it float up. He said, "That's for Mama." And everybody broke down. Grown men crying like children. That's when you see it. Murder don't just end a life. It changed a whole community. So what do? How do we fight back against this cycle? I'll tell you. We gotta talk. We gotta care. And yeah, we gotta learn to defend ourselves. That's why we added a real self-defense course, made by law enforcement and martial artists. It's in the description and pinned comment. 1 hour that might save your life. But back to Toshemie. Her family set up a scholarship in her name for young mothers to honor the way she hustled for her kids. They wanted her name to live past the grave. Her story is still told in her neighborhood. People say she didn't deserve it, and they're right. She didn't. But life don't always play fair. Death don't always knock. Sometimes it just busts in. And that's the story of Toshemie Wilson, a young mother, a victim, a fighter who never got a chance to finish her fight.